Hey, and welcome to the April. Bloody hell, what month are we in? April Flower Grow Along. Goodness me, it's because I'm looking ahead to May, and obviously it is May this weekend. This month we are planting nerines and growing our nerines. I was hoping to be able to get out in the garden and do this, but it's raining. Now, I don't want to complain because it has not rained for I don't know how long, but the garden really needed it. So I don't want to moan, but I really wanted to get out and get in the garden and get planting. But hey, I was always going to plant some of these in a pot anyway. So I can do that in here to show you. And obviously, if there's any questions, you can just let me know. The reason I always do a few things in pots is because I like to have some in the ground and some in pots, but also I've got like a big wooden table in my garden that we can kind of sit around and have food and entertain. And I always have a few of these little terracotta pots on there with different things growing in them. But I always, I kind of rotate them. So as the ones that are there at the minute are kind of just starting to die back a bit. So I need to kind of put the next things in. So I kind of tend to move things onto there as they're coming into flower. So I kind of always have like a little rotation of these pots going on. And yeah, so I mean, the nerines won't flower till later in the summer, but I've obviously got to start them now. And if I get them in their pot ready, then I can literally just pop them straight out onto the table once they've got those lovely pink flower heads. So this is what they look like in the ground. Obviously they'll look the same in the pot. I'm just only going to plant 3 bulbs because this is a relatively small pot. If you've got a bigger pot, you can put all 5 of yours in. And obviously, if you're planting in the ground, you can just put them all together in a clump. They do look much better if you plant them in a clump rather than kind of dotting them through the border, because although they will spread, it's because of the way that they look, they are quite spindly. So if you plant them in the clump, they just look more effective sooner. And also they are a bit funny about being like dotted in amongst other plants. They don't really like it. So they're from South Africa, so they naturally love a bit of sun, which is why in a minute you'll see we're going to plant them with the bulbs kind of poking out of the top of the soil, because they like, a bit like irises, they like to have the sun on their roots. I'm just checking I'm recording here. Because of that, they quite like to be planted, if you can, at the base of a wall or or like a fence area, kind of where they're a little bit sheltered. So just bear that in mind. And like I said, they don't really like to be kind of disturbed by other plants. One thing to point out is, though, that they will multiply over time. So you will start with a relatively small clump, but they will get bigger more and more every year. And eventually they will stop flowering as effectively. This might take like 5 years, depending on how much space you've got in your borders. And once they kind of start to, you kind of notice them slowing down a bit, or they're just getting really, really congested, then you can dig them up and divide, your one massive clump into a few different clumps. Or just 2 smaller clumps, whatever works for your garden. So they really are a workhorse in the garden. So what are we going to do? Firstly, we are going to have a good old look at them, because they remind me a little bit of amaryllis bulbs. I would wager, I should probably know this, but I think they're probably from the same family just because they look so similar. I'm going to have to my cooker alarm keeps going off. And I can't work out how to stop it. I'm just going to go turn it off. Hang on a sec. I'll try to anyway. I think it's going to go off again in a minute. How do I cancel the thing? Sorry guys, this is not what you signed up for. Me having cooker dramas. Right, I think it's going to go off again in about 20 seconds. So I'm just going to wait here until it's finished, and then hopefully I can work out how to shut it up. Might have to turn it off at the otherwise. Right, I think it might be fixed. Good. Off again. So yeah, they're quite ugly when you look at them. Most bulbs are. I'm just going to move my cup of tea. I don't want bulb debris in there. This one's got particularly long roots, which you can just kind of pull off, especially if you're planting in a pot. It's not so important if you're planting outside, but you want to kind of, you know, have a good amount of space. We're going to plant them quite high in this pot. Just have a really good look at them. This one you can see is already sprouting, which is cool. And this one has got a little leaf that's trying to come up there as well. This one's not really doing a lot. But yeah, just notice the difference in size, notice the texture of the skin. Give them a smell. They don't really smell of anything, which is odd. I thought they might kind of smell a bit musty, but they don't. And just, yeah, just notice the sensation of the skin on your skin, and also when you're kind of, you know, maybe if you're going to pull some of these roots off as well, just notice that sensation too. There we go. Okie dokie. So if you're planting outside, you're going to probably lay them out in the pattern that you want to plant them, and then dig a hole at a time. But obviously I'm going to be planting in this container. So in my container, I have got a container with a hole in the bottom. This is really key when you're planting bulbs because they don't like to sit in wet. So you want to give them lots of space, lots of stuff, drainage basically for the water to escape. So I'm going to put a few of these bits of broken roof tile, which you may have heard referred to as crocks. So you just pop those in the bottom there. Okay. And then you can, if you want to, put some gravel in. I'm not going to. It's a relatively small pot, and there, you know, there's not too many bulbs. But so the next thing you're going to do is get some compost. Oh, this is lovely. It's really wet. It's been outside. So it smells really good as well. And then you're just going to kind of crumble it into the pot. Now, the reason I kind of break it up with bulbs is because you want their roots, well, all plants really, is you want their roots to be able to get easily into the soil. So I'm just kind of letting it fall through my fingers there, noticing that sensation and dropping the soil down. Now, we have to think about height here. I don't want the soil to come much higher than this line if I can, because otherwise every time I water it, the soil will all just come out of the pot, which is just so annoying, makes a mess, and you're wasting good soil. So I just need to kind of take my bulbs, because ideally we're going to put them into the pot with the tips poking out, so the necks. So this is the neck here, this is the body, and then this is the neck. So the necks need to be poking out. So that actually is quite good. I'll put it on that side so you can see. So if I sit that one on there, you can see that the line is just around the base of the neck. So that's where I'm going to fill up to with compost, is that line. So that's actually a really good height for that one. I'm just going to check the others. Yeah, that's a good one as well. It's a bit wonky. And that one as well. Now you can see how I've kind of spread them out there. So I don't really want them touching, and ideally I don't really want them touching the side of the pot either, because that might just hamper their growth a little bit. So I'm just going to top that bit up. This one's a bit of a shorter one, so pop that in there. Okie dokie. And then I'm just going to use my compost to fill in the gaps. Again, breaking it up as you let it fall through your fingers, to make sure it kind of fills in the gaps. Oh, I'm making a right old mess, good day. Cleaner's literally just been as well, so they will be happy. Never mind, but just make sure I clean up after myself. There we go. Okie dokie. There we go. Right, so you can see there I've got the 3 necks of the bulbs exposed. I'm gonna put a little bit more compost. Now, because I've planted this in a pot, if I wanted to, I could put some gravel on the top. this does a few things. It keeps the water in the pot, stops the water from evaporating so readily, so you'll have to water them less. They are bulbs, so they shouldn't need that much watering anyway, but that will just help you to keep the water in. It looks nice as well, because it just kind of finishes it off. This looks a little bit unfinished. And then it also prevents any annual weed seeds that will be floating about in the wind landing into your soil, and it just makes it a bit harder for them to actually get their roots in and then set up camp in there, basically. So if you've got any gravel, just kind of like almost like a pea shingle, so really small like grit or gravel will look really good on top of there. And then obviously you're going to write your plant marker. If I was planting this in my border, I'm a bit of a heathen. I don't tend to use plant markers in my borders. Probably should, but I don't. But if you want to be able to remember what everything is, then it's important that you do label them. But because these are going in a pot, I need to copy the name down. I want to remember what they are, so. There we go. And then I'm just going to stick that in the side of the pot there. And then I will just put this somewhere in my garden to kind of do its thing. And then once it starts to flower, I'm going to then move that onto my big table to kind of really make a statement. It will be on there with a few other pots that are flowering at the same time to kind of just really look dramatic. And then obviously I'm not going to need to do this today because it is raining relatively heavily outside. But generally I'm inside, so I'm not going to get the watering can out in here. But generally you would get some form of watering can or water vessel. It doesn't have to be a watering can, and you're just going to pour it on. And as you do it, notice the colour change in the soil. So this compost is actually quite damp, so there probably wouldn't be that much of a colour change, but especially if you're using a watering can with a rose as well, as you pour, just kind of try to close your eyes. Obviously make sure you don't just pour water everywhere, but just focus in on the sound of the water contacting with the soil, because actually that's a really wonderfully meditative way, especially if you've had a bit of a full-on day and you just want to try and relax. Then that is a really good sense to tune into your sense of sound or hearing at that point. So the first thing you're going to notice is some leaves coming up. Then they are going to die back, those leaves, and you're probably going to think, oh shit, have I killed it? You haven't killed it, don't panic. That's just the way the plant works. And then once the leaves have died back a bit, that's when the flower spikes will come. First year or so, don't be really disappointed if you don't get any flower spikes. They don't really like being moved, Nerines, so they may just take a little bit of time to kind of get themselves used to their new location. If they don't flower for a couple of years, it might be that they don't like where you put them. So if it's a bit of a shady spot, they won't like that. They like full sun. Or if they're kind of in amongst or too close to other plants, it might be that they don't like that. So they can be a little bit deavery, but I think that's why I like them. But when they do flower, they are quirky and stunning, and just different, which I think is which is nice to have, and like I said, if you get them in a place where they're really happy, they will just multiply and multiply and multiply, which is great. If you want to cut them for cut flowers, you absolutely can, but obviously if you cut the flower, then the bulb, then you won't get a flower again the next year, if you know what I mean. So I would advise waiting a bit of time, allowing them to kind of do their thing, multiply, and then you can start cutting a few of the flowers, for arrangements or for the house. So yeah, just kind of leave them a little bit of time to kind of bed in, get used to everything. Once they're happy, they'll start to multiply, and then that's when you can start to pick them. If you don't choose to harvest them and you leave them on the plant, once the flowers has kind of started to go over, so at the minute, if I look out in my garden, some of my tulips are starting to go over. So with bulbs, what we want to happen is we don't want the flower to set seed. We want the flower to put all of its energy back into that bulb, so make sure we get a flower again next year. So once the kind of leaves start to fall off, if you can see the stems kind of starting to make these little seed pods, just snip off the seed pod, chuck it away, leave the stem on and any leaves, and let all of that green goodness go back into the bulbs. And then once once that kind of foliage has all gone yellow, that's when you can pull it off, store these somewhere dry. Obviously, if they're in the ground, you can just leave them in the ground. But because mine will be in a pot, I'll have to store them over winter, just somewhere cool and dry with a bit of make sure there's a bit of airflow in there. I tell you, I've just taken them outside, which is annoying. But you can go to, if you've got like a local farm shop or deli or something like that, they have those great, they are plastic, but I figure you're recycling them, so why not? But they're kind of, I think they buy like the mushrooms in them or something, but they're those kind of quite shallow, either black or blue plastic crates with like holes in. They're quite flimsy, but they're really, really good for storing bulbs because you can stack them on top of one another. So I've just got a big stack in my garage out the way of all my bulbs, and I don't have to worry about the airflow because I know that the air can get to all of the bulbs, because I make sure when I lay them in, I only lay them in a single layer. I don't kind of put tons of them in there because I want the air to keep flowing, especially if like when you've dug them up, it's been a bit of a wet day and they've got a bit damp. You just want to make sure that no mold has the opportunity to kind of grow in there. So yeah, that's Nerines. Obviously, if you couldn't make it live this week, that's absolutely no problem. We'll have another grow along in 2 weeks' time, which will be the veggie one, and then the flower one will be 2 weeks again after that. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what they are yet because it's a nice surprise when you open your boxes to see what you've got. But do try and come along to them. It's really nice to kind of get together as community. It's your opportunity to ask me any questions about your garden, about mindful gardening, about any of the things that we have learned in the program. And use me. If you've got any questions about other things in your garden, then bring them along and you can ask me about those as well. But anyway, have a lovely week and I will see you next week. Bye.